A little earlier. Well, of course, if there were European elections, there'd be an awful lot of focus on UKIP because they topped the poll in the last election. So what might they be doing? What preparations are they making? Let's speak to their leader, Gerard Batten. Hello, welcome. That would be quite a thing after the referendum if we are involved in the European elections, but the government is saying that is a very distinct possibility. So are you gearing up for a European election?
We don't want there to be European elections because that effectively means that we haven't left the European Union, and it's unlikely that we will. So we don't want them, but it's my duty to prepare for it, which is what I've been doing now for some weeks. We've already been recruiting candidates, we've been raising money, so if there is a European election, we will fight all out in all 12 regions of the UK on the proposition that if you want to leave the European Union, you vote UKIP, because we're the only party that actually genuinely stands for that. We stand for an unconditional, unilateral withdrawal on our terms, not the EU's terms. And if you remember, the reason that you had the referendum in the first place is because of the UKIP electoral threat. And the best way of reintroducing that threat will be in the European elections, which will again see us, I have no doubt, top the poll. Lots of UKIP MEPs who will then have a platform to argue for a genuine exit from the European Union.
Plenty of governments in Europe know they're in for a very tough election in May, so there's a very good chance that UKIP, particularly given what's happened here in Westminster, are going to pick up a number of votes. But it's a difficult one to plan for because there's no polling for the European elections. I mean, where do you channel your resources?
Well, it doesn't matter. You channel them everywhere because it's a bit different from a...
So how many are you putting forward?
Oh, well, there is a full complement of 73 candidates in 12 regions. For example, London has 8 candidates, 8 MEP seats. Other regions have 7, 6, 8, 10, whatever. So we will blanket the whole country. It's not difficult to do. You've only got to find 73 candidates. It's not like a general election with 650 candidates. We've got to find the money to fight that, which is what we're doing now. And it's a lot easier to fight than a general election. And of course, it's on proportional representation. And that message has got through to the electorate now over the years that you get what you vote for in a European election. You get the candidates returned in the proportion that you vote for them.
Are you preparing for a legal battle as well? Because we don't know what mechanism the European Union would come up with. They may say we'll send some MPs from the House of Westminster to Brussels and Strasbourg to sit in your place. So what have you been told about that in Strasbourg?
If I can just say a bit about the votes. The middle one puzzles me because the middle one says they first vote rejected a second referendum. The middle vote says that if Parliament votes for Mrs May's deal on the 3rd attempt next week, OK, so we're leaving on the 29th of March then, but then they're asking for an extension until the 30th of June. Now, why would that be? That doesn't make sense because there won't be any...
to get the legislation through.
The Withdrawal Act already says that that they, that makes provision for doing all that.
There's an awful lot of legislation that goes with the Withdrawal Act. You've got to put it into law.
But you could have still left the European Union because, as I've been arguing all these years, all EU legislation has been passed into Acts of Parliament or regulations. So it all stays in place. So there wouldn't be a problem that affects the European Union. It would just be a question of changing that legislation, however it needs to be changed. But what worries me about this second vote is that there's something more here, in that the government wants to delay until the 30th of June. That would mean that the current MEPs come to the end of their term in the early July, so we would stay in our seats. But what I'm wondering is if they're intending to pull something else out of the hat at the end of June and say, well, in actual fact, we need yet another extension to Article 50, but in the meantime, we haven't taken part in the European elections. It's too late.
Just a quick one. At the last election, you had how many? 24?
24.
24 MEPs. It's been a distinctly rocky road, let's face it, for UKIP since that election. You've now got how many? 7? 7. You don't talk to Nigel Farage, I know, but he's saying that he's going to be lobbying for one of the countries to veto the extension next week. What are your 7 MEPs doing within the Parliament?
First of all, Nigel made the decision that he was going to leave UKIP, and he now says that he's joined this other Brexit party, which doesn't really seem to exist except as a registered name with the Electoral Commission. There's nothing else behind it. I think him talking about lobbying the heads of state of other European countries is, quite frankly, just a PR stunt to get him in front of the TV cameras. I wouldn't pretend that the heads of states of the other European countries are going to listen to me or my MEPs. I think their decision will be based on if the UK leaves, there's a big hole in the budget and somebody's got to pay that money and they don't want to. So I think while they might be sympathetic to us leaving and might think it's a good idea for their country in the long run, in the short term they won't want to have to pick up that shortfall in the budget, so they're unlikely to vote against an extension of Article 50, bearing in mind that it only takes one of them to dissent because it needs a unanimous decision. So I certainly hope that someone like Viktor Orban or the Italians or maybe even the Spanish would actually say, no, let's get rid of the UK, they're more trouble than they're worth, and actually do us that big favour. But I wouldn't put money on it.
Gerard Batten, good of you to come and talk to us. Thank you very much indeed.